The morning sun stretched its golden fingers across the vast African savanna, casting long, soft shadows over the yellow soil. Tiny dust clouds danced across the ground as the warm wind moved the tall grasses in gentle waves. Birds flitted between the sparse acacia bushes, their songs weaving a delicate, bright harmony through the quiet. For a moment, the savanna seemed at peace, as if the world itself were holding its breath. A gentle, sweet smell of earth and dry grass hung in the air, carrying the promise of life and the subtle undercurrent of danger that the jungle always kept hidden. Among the swaying grasses, a tiny gorilla cub explored with wide-eyed curiosity. Its fur, dark and soft in the morning light, shimmered as it bounded clumsily through the uneven terrain, occasionally tumbling into a patch of grass with a soft thud. The cub's small hands brushed against the ground, leaving tiny impressions in the dust, and its eyes shone with wonder at the fluttering insects and the subtle ripple of movement around it. For the cub, every rustle of grass or glint of sunlight seemed like a new discovery, a secret of the world it was only beginning to understand. Its small chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, excitement and innocence radiating in every step, as if the savanna itself were a playground designed just for it. Far off, hidden behind a small ridge, a leopard crouched low, its sleek, spotted body nearly invisible among the tall grasses. The predator's golden eyes reflected the sun as it watched the cub with calculated patience. Its breathing was steady, controlled, every muscle poised for the slightest movement. The cub, unaware of the silent gaze following its every motion, swung its arms toward a hovering butterfly, chasing it with clumsy leaps. The tension between predator and prey existed quietly at first, like a soft hum beneath the brightness of morning. Every flick of the cub's tail, every squeak and stumble was magnified in the still air. From another vantage point, the adult lion rested on a sun-drenched ridge, its tawny coat glowing under the warm light. Muscles coiled beneath its skin, yet the lion remained calm, a silent guardian of this territory. Its golden eyes scanned the horizon, not just for prey, but for any sign of threat to the creatures it had watched over for many seasons. The cub's playful movements drew the lion's attention, stirring a protective instinct that had no words, but a clear intent. The lion did not move, did not growl. It simply observed, poised to intervene if necessary, a living monument of strength and patience. The cub, emboldened by its solitude, ventured further from the safe shadows of a nearby bush. It paused to sniff at a patch of wildflowers, tiny arms outstretched, ears perked to the soft whispers of the wind. Dust rose around its small feet with every step, catching the sunlight and turning the air golden. Birds flitted nervously above, sensing the invisible tension, yet the cub remained oblivious, lost in its small, innocent world. Each step it took pulled it closer to danger, yet the cub's curiosity was pure and untainted, a reminder of life's fragile joy. A sudden rustle in the undergrowth made the cub freeze. Its small body stiffened, ears pivoting toward the sound. The leopard shifted slightly, a silent shadow within the golden grasses, watching, waiting, patient. The cub's wide eyes scanned the waving stems, and for a brief moment a flicker of unease crossed its face. But curiosity outweighed fear, and it stepped forward again, unaware of the predator calculating the perfect moment to strike. The savanna's calm had a fragile edge now, a tension that hummed in the air like an unspoken warning. Every leaf that trembled, every bird that sang a sudden sharp note contributed to a symphony of suspense that the cub could not yet understand. A warm breeze carried the scent of the distant river, mingled with the earthy aroma of the soil and dry grass. The cub inhaled deeply, as if drinking in the entire savanna, its tiny chest rising with a soft sigh.
The sunlight glinted off the dew on the tips of the grass, and for a moment the world seemed to shimmer in golden perfection. Then a distant crack of a twig underfoot sent a shiver through the cub's small frame. It glanced around nervously, realizing perhaps for the first time that it was not alone. The leopard's eyes gleamed from the undergrowth, still hidden, still patient, the predator's calm precision contrasting sharply with the cub's innocent, jittery movements. Meanwhile, the lion on the ridge shifted its weight slightly, muscles coiling and relaxing in measured rhythm. Its gaze never left the cub, its silent presence a reminder that the savannah was a place of guardianship as much as of threat. The lion's golden mane flickered in the sunlight, the dust rising around its paws like a halo. It watched for signs of danger, every instinct attuned to the delicate balance of life in this vast, yellow-soiled expanse. Though still, the lion's posture carried a warning, a silent promise that some lives in this savannah were worth protecting, no matter the risk. The cub moved again, pawing at a patch of flowers, its small laughter-like sounds mixing with the wind. Dust swirled around it, and the rustling grasses hid the tension rising from the predator waiting below. Every motion of the cub seemed both innocent and reckless, unaware that life and death often linger in the spaces between shadows. The golden sunlight now glowed warmer, highlighting the delicate features of the cub, the hard, powerful form of the lion, and the hidden menace of the leopard, a triangle of motion and stillness, curiosity and instinct. Time seemed to slow, stretching every moment into a fragile thread of suspense. The cub's small hands brushed against the grass, brushing off invisible dust motes that danced in the light. The savannah held its breath with it, the wind pausing mid-air, the birds silenced in mid-flight, as if the world itself were aware that danger waited nearby. The lion's gaze was steady, unwavering, a calm island of power in a sea of uncertainty. The leopard's patience held like a taut string, ready to snap. Finally, the cub sat down, exhausted from its little adventures, its small chest heaving with rapid breaths. It looked around at the horizon, unaware of the eyes tracking its every move. A soft chirp of a bird broke the silence, and the cub tilted its head, listening. The savannah exhaled slowly in the morning heat, dust drifting down from the tips of grass like golden snow. In this fleeting calm, the contrast between innocence and danger, playfulness and threat, strength and vulnerability became almost unbearable. The cub, the predator, and the guardian lion existed in perfect tension, a delicate balance that could shatter in a heartbeat. As the sun climbed higher, the shadows shifted, the golden light glinting off every curve of the landscape. The cub rolled onto its back in playful delight, tiny arms reaching skyward, and for one brief moment the world seemed safe again. But the distant rustle in the grasses, the faint shimmer of movement in the corner of the eye, reminded the observer that the savannah's peace was only temporary. Beneath the beauty of light, the play of dust, and the song of birds, danger waited, patient and silent, for the day's story to unfold. The cub's laughter, soft and pure, echoed across the plains. The lion, still on the ridge, let out a low rumble of acknowledgment, a quiet bond forming with a life it had yet to defend. The leopard's eyes narrowed, muscles tightening in preparation. And somewhere deep in the heart of the golden savannah, the first threads of the coming storm began to twist through the grass, unseen but felt by all who lived there. The morning held a fragile beauty, and in that beauty, the first chapter of a story about courage, innocence, and the untamed laws of the wild quietly began.
The sudden snap of a twig shattered the fragile calm of the morning. The gorilla cub, still clumsy on its tiny feet, turned just in time to see a streak of spotted fur spring from the waving grass. Time seemed to stretch as the leopard's claws sliced the air, teeth bared in a lethal snarl. Panic exploded in the cub's small chest, its tiny arms flailing as it scrambled backward, desperate to escape. Dust rose in thick clouds, twirling around the tussling shapes like golden smoke, and the shrill cries of the cub echoed across the savannah, bouncing off the distant acacia bushes. Every heartbeat pounded like a drum in the stillness, each one a warning that life and death were dancing inches apart. The leopard's grip was swift, merciless, sinking into the cub's shoulder as the little one squealed in terror. The cub's small body twisted, trying to wriggle free, but the predator's strength was overwhelming. Tiny hands clawed at the earth, scraping through dust and grit, leaving faint tracks that would soon be lost in the whirlwind of movement. The leopard's growl was low and menacing, vibrating through the air like a warning the savannah itself could feel. The cub's wide eyes reflected sheer horror, a mix of disbelief and instinctual fear as the world narrowed into the immediate struggle for survival. Then, a deep, rolling rumble shattered the chaos, cutting through the leopard's growl like thunder. From the ridge above, the adult lion burst into motion, muscles rippling beneath a golden mane that caught the harsh sunlight. Dust erupted around its powerful paws as it raced down the slope, a living force of nature, eyes locked on the predator with unyielding focus. The lion's roar tore across the plains, a raw, vibrating sound that echoed from tree to tree, demanding attention and respect. Even the wind seemed to pause, holding the dust in suspension as predator and protector faced each other in the middle of the savannah. The leopard hesitated, ears flattening against its head, muscles tensed like coiled springs. For a heartbeat, the world froze. The cub, trembling and wide-eyed, pressed itself against the earth, watching courage and fury collide in the golden haze. The lion's eyes burned with intensity, unwavering and sharp, every inch of its massive frame radiating authority and raw power. It circled the leopard with calculated movements, a predator in its own right, yet every action carefully measured to protect the helpless cub. The ground beneath them seemed to vibrate, dust rising in slow, swirling columns around the figures locked in tense opposition. The leopard lunged again, faster this time, claws slashing toward the lion, teeth glinting in the sunlight. The lion met the attack with a swift sidestep, powerful paws swinging in controlled arcs, forcing the leopard to retreat a fraction. The struggle became a violent dance, each predator moving with lethal grace, instincts honed by seasons of survival. The cub's squeaks of terror punctuated the scene, rising and falling with every clash of claws and teeth. Dust coated everything, turning the world into a golden whirlwind, particles clinging to fur, glinting in sunlight, blurring the edges of chaos. At that moment, the cub froze entirely, pressed flat to the ground, tiny chest heaving with rapid breaths. Its gaze shifted between the two titans, eyes wide with fear and awe. It could barely comprehend the courage it was witnessing, the unimaginable risk taken by the lion for its protection. Every flinch of the predator, every growl, every swing of massive paws heightened the tension, filling the air with raw, tangible emotion. Even the birds overhead took flight, wings beating frantically against the wind, adding to the frenzy. The savannah seemed alive, vibrating with the collision of life, death, and protection. The lion's roar split the air again, shaking loose a few frightened insects and sending a crow cawing overhead into panicked flight. The leopard recoiled, muscles rippling in frustration and calculation, its eyes locked on the lion, but constantly aware of the cub at its feet. The predator snarled, then leapt sideways, barely missing a crushing paw that struck the ground with earth-shaking force. The cub's heart pounded in synchrony with the unfolding battle, every beat an echo of terror and hope intertwined. Its small fingers dug into the soil, gripping desperately as if the earth itself could offer safety. The clash slowed only briefly as both predators assessed one another. Sunlight glinted off sweat and fur, highlighting every tense muscle, every sharp tooth, every flick of claws. The cub, curled up like a shadow in the dust, dared a glance, seeing the lion stand tall, mane rippling, chest rising and falling with deliberate, steady breaths. Courage radiated from every inch of its massive frame, a silent vow that no harm would reach the small, trembling creature it had chosen to protect. The leopard hissed in response, a sound of raw defiance and unyielding instinct, but a subtle shift betrayed the predator's awareness. This was no ordinary prey encounter. The lion advanced slowly, deliberately, closing the distance in measured strides. Each step raised dust, turning the golden soil into a haze that blurred the edges of the confrontation. The leopard lunged again, but this time the lion anticipated, sidestepping with uncanny precision, its massive paw striking the ground in a controlled stomp that sent the predator skidding slightly backward. Panic flickered in the leopard's eyes, recognition dawning that the cub was no longer defenseless, that this savannah held guardians stronger and more willing than it had expected. Time stretched in the golden haze as predator faced predator, raw power meeting instinctive protection. The cub, trembling and wide-eyed, slowly unfurled its small fingers from the soil and pressed its body closer to the lion's shadow. In the brief stillness, every sound became amplified: the hiss of the leopard, the rumble of the lion, the scratching of claws against earth, and the rapid, shallow breathing of a tiny gorilla struggling to make sense of the violence surrounding it. The tension was almost unbearable, the air thick with dust and emotion, but a strange, fragile hope began to root. Finally, the leopard paused, muscles quivering, weighing its options. The lion's steady stance, unwavering eyes, and raw presence left no doubt that this encounter would not end in its favor. Slowly, carefully, the leopard began to retreat, sinking back into the tall grass that had once hid it. The cub, sensing the shift, pressed against the ground, ears flattened, eyes wide but hopeful. The lion remained alert, watching every twitch of the predator's tail until the leopard disappeared entirely into the shadows of the savannah. The cub let out a tentative, shivering breath, chest rising and falling in uneven relief. The lion, mane dusted with earth, lowered itself slightly, watching the cub with eyes that softened, revealing a rare, unspoken tenderness. The golden haze of the savannah settled around them, dust drifting lazily, wind moving the tall grasses in gentle waves, restoring a fragile sense of peace. In that moment, the cub's tiny body quivered, not just with fear, but with awe, understanding, in some instinctive way, that courage and protection existed even in the harshest wilds. Above, the sun climbed higher, shadows shortening, and the savannah exhaled, as if releasing a held breath. The cub slowly straightened, pressing itself against the lion's shadow, feeling the warmth and presence of its protector. The world seemed to expand, the golden soil stretching into infinity, every blade of grass, every dust mote suspended in sunlight, telling a story of danger survived and guardianship earned.
The golden haze of the savannah hung heavy in the air, dust slowly settling as the echoes of the struggle faded. The lion's massive paws pressed into the soft yellow soil, muscles rippling with the last tension of battle, eyes still fixed on the retreating leopard. With a final calculated strike, the predator had been forced back into the thick brush, its retreat punctuated by a low hiss of frustration and the rustle of leaves. The world seemed to exhale in that moment, a silence heavy yet soothing, as if the savannah itself recognized the fragility of life it had witnessed. The gorilla cub lay trembling in the dust, tiny chest heaving, eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the lion as though trying to understand why this creature, so fierce, so powerful, had spared it. Time seemed to slow. The wind moved gently through the tall grasses, lifting dust in soft, lazy spirals that caught the morning sun and turned the air golden.
The cub's small hands pressed into the warm soil, grounding itself, seeking safety in the familiarity of the earth beneath it. The lion's mane, now dusted with faint streaks of gold from the soil, glimmered in the sunlight, and its eyes softened, no longer the sharp, threatening gaze of the battle, but the quiet, watchful presence of a protector. It lowered its massive head slightly, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the cub, a careful and deliberate gesture that spoke more than any words could. The cub, sensing no further threat, shuffled forward with hesitant steps, tiny fingers brushing against the golden soil, closing the distance between fear and trust. A shiver ran through the cub's small frame as it stopped at the lion's shadow. For a moment it paused, tiny chest rising and falling with shallow, trembling breaths. The lion remained still, a sentinel of calm power, letting the cub approach, a silent guardian whose intentions were clear without needing explanation. The wind moved through the grass like a soft whisper, carrying the scent of earth, dust, and the lingering traces of adrenaline from the conflict. Each blade of grass shimmered in the sunlight, bending and swaying with quiet rhythm, a gentle contrast to the chaos that had erupted only moments before. The cub's mother emerged from the shadows of a nearby acacia, her steps cautious but urgent. Her eyes, wide with worry and relief, locked onto the cub, whose body stiffened with recognition. In a heartbeat, maternal instinct overcame fear. She wrapped her arms around the trembling little one, pressing it close, murmuring soft, guttural sounds of reassurance that only a mother could provide. The cub clung to her, face pressed into her fur, letting the warmth and familiarity soothe the lingering tremors of terror. The lion remained at a respectful distance, eyes never leaving the reunited pair, a silent acknowledgement that its role in this fragile victory had no need for acknowledgement or claim. The golden sunlight bathed the scene in warmth, highlighting the textures of fur, soil, and dust. The cub peeked from the safety of its mother's embrace, glancing at the lion with wide, curious eyes. There was no fear now, only awe, as if the tiny gorilla had glimpsed something beyond its understanding, a lesson in courage, protection, and unexpected mercy in the heart of the wild. The lion exhaled slowly, nostrils flaring, then sat back on its haunches, mane rippling in the gentle wind. Its presence was commanding yet calm, a living symbol of power tempered with compassion. Birds resumed their flight, chirping softly from acacia branches, adding music to the quiet aftermath. The dust settled fully, falling back to the soil like a fine golden blanket over the plains. The cub huddled close to its mother, small breaths slowly calming, heartbeats synchronizing, and the golden sunlight shimmered over the lion, dusting its mane with glimmers of victory and compassion. In this serene aftermath, the story of danger, courage, and unexpected protection had reached its quiet conclusion. Life in the savannah would continue, fragile yet resilient, carrying the memory of an extraordinary act into the endless golden horizon. As the camera widened, the plain stretched into infinity. The mother and child moved together toward the distant shade, the lion remaining a silent guardian on the ridge. Dust drifted in the warm wind, grasses swaying in gentle waves, and the golden sunlight bathed the scene in tranquil majesty. The world had witnessed both peril and unexpected mercy. And in that moment, the savannah whispered a quiet truth, that survival was not only about strength and instinct, but about courage, compassion, and the small, profound acts that could change a life forever.